I still remember the look in his eyes that day, a cold, vacant stare, like I was nothing more than an old piece of furniture that needed to be cleared out. No greeting, no handshake. He looked at me as if he had already decided my fate before stepping into the room. I had been through two corporate restructurings, one brutal merger and countless sleepless nights in front of spreadsheets, but never had I felt as small as I did then. 12 years of dedication to Phoenix Biolabs were crushed in less than 5 minutes. And the one who ended it all was a 32-year-old kid just appointed that day, Noah Whitmore, the only son of the founder and former CEO. My name is Sophia Ellis, 46 years old, head of strategic analysis at Phoenix Biolabs, a biotech corporation headquartered in Austin, Texas. I joined the company when it was just a startup with fewer than 30 people. Those early years were sleepless marathons, racing deadlines and surviving the constant threat of investor pullouts. But we made it through. I was there when we secured Series C funding. I proposed the clinical data strategy that helped us land the Horizon Hospital System deal in 2017. I wasn't the star, I was the foundation. Noah walked into headquarters that day like he was arriving at a private cocktail party thrown in his honor. Light-colored, tailored suit, a sparkling Rolex under a shirt sleeve that had never once been rolled up for real work. No notice, no introduction meeting, no internal email from the board. He just suddenly appeared on the 8th floor where the strategy and operations teams sat. Like he was surveying foreign land he was about to rebuild. I was pouring myself coffee in the pantry when he entered. "You're Sophia?" he asked, tone flat like reading off a grocery list. "Yes, hello, Noah. Welcome to Phoenix," I said with a polite smile. He didn't return the greeting, just gave a small nod, scanning the room like he was appraising assets during a foreclosure. "Bring your laptop to my office in 10 minutes, he said, then turned and walked off. No thank you, no explanation. I stood frozen for a few seconds. A chill ran down my spine. I knew this feeling. It was the feeling of a ship about to be handed a new helm. Exactly 10 minutes later, I knocked on meeting room 2, recently renamed Executive Strategy Room. Noah didn't offer me a seat. He leaned back in his chair, hands interlocked behind his head, eyes on his laptop like he was reviewing his morning to-do list. "The company's entering a phase of workforce optimization," he said, as if announcing a new dish at a restaurant. "We're restructuring teams, increasing agility, reducing redundancy, and some roles are under evaluation." I stayed quiet, waiting for him to finish. "Your team doesn't align with our new direction. You'll be let go, effective today. Your severance package has been sent to your email. We expect your cooperation." Without looking me in the eye, Noah turned back to his screen like the matter was already done. I had mentally prepared for many scenarios: budget cuts, policy changes, even temporary reassignment. But to be fired without a performance review, without feedback, without a single word acknowledging my contribution, I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I just looked at him for a few seconds, then nodded. "Good luck, Noah," I said softly, but it was the kind of soft that comes before a storm, flattens the coast. I walked out of the room silently, passing by colleagues pretending to work while clearly eavesdropping. Some eyes held sympathy, some disbelief, and a few gratitude that it wasn't them. No one said anything. No one had to. I packed up in 15 minutes. One cardboard box, a few personal files, and an old photo frame from the 2019 Innovation of the Year Awards ceremony. He didn't know, or didn't care, that I was the original signer of the deal with our current largest investor. He didn't know I once saved the company from a federal investigation in 2020, thanks to a decade of partner relationships. To him, I was just part of the waste to be optimized out. And because of that, he made an irreversible mistake. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the revolving door of Phoenix Biolabs like it was still swallowing part of my soul. Then something quiet settled inside me. The hurt turned into clarity, the kind of instinct a seasoned wolf gets when the forest is burning. but her nose still knows where the wind is about to shift. I wasn't angry. Truly. I'd been through enough storms to understand that sometimes the person who pushes you off the sinking ship might be the one saving your life. But Noah's fatal arrogance was this. He tore up the compass without even checking the map. Phoenix Biolabs was 3 weeks away from presenting the final round of a strategic partnership proposal to Lydian Group, a financial conglomerate investing in biotech. They weren't the kind to throw money around and walk away. They were meticulous, detail obsessed. And more than anything, they placed trust in the individual representing the deal. In this case, me. 3 years ago, when Phoenix struggled to expand trial markets into the Northeast, I was the one who first connected with Marcus Linwood, Lydian's head of strategic investment. We met at a conference in Denver. The conversation started over a broken coffee machine and ended with a 37-page contract draft. Since then, I had been the sole liaison between our companies. No middlemen, no forwarded emails, and absolutely no signatures without my presence at the final negotiation. I clearly remember the clause I personally requested legal to insert in the original draft. Any change in senior personnel or lead negotiator shall trigger renegotiation or termination of the agreement. That clause was added after a late-night call when Marcus told me a prior deal collapsed because the lead contact disappeared right before signing. I understood that fear, and I protected against it. Noah didn't know. He hadn't read a single contract. He didn't even bother asking why Lydian chose Phoenix over a dozen smaller, cheaper, more agile firms. To him, I was just another outdated name in a list of obstacles. That evening, as I poured myself a glass of wine, my phone rang. It was Alyssa Brown, Marcus's assistant, calling from her personal line, Rare. Her voice was barely above a whisper, so I switched to speaker and leaned in. Sophia, is it true you're no longer at Phoenix? Yes. Why? Noah thought I'd no longer fit the new direction. A taut silence hung between us. Marcus won't be happy. He had the presentation prepped. Thought you'd be co-leading it with him next week. I know, and I'm sorry, but I didn't get a choice. I ended the call after a few brief exchanges and stepped out onto the balcony. The night wind in Austin had a way of sobering you in the middle of chaos. At that moment, I thought, it won't be long now. And true enough, the next morning at 8:47, as I held my coffee at the window, my phone buzzed with a message. Sophia, Phoenix just lost the deal. Marcus canceled today's meeting. Noah called and was shut down immediately. I laughed, ever since yesterday. Not out of joy, but because it all happened faster than I expected. I hadn't made a single phone call, hadn't said a word to anyone, but like all long-standing relationships, Lydian didn't need a reminder from me. They just needed to see I was gone. By noon that day, I had already received 4 messages from former colleagues. The tone was the same across the board. They're panicking. Noah has locked himself in the conference room since morning, legal team scrambling. And someone from Lydian called Mr. Henry, the chairman, demanding to know why you left. I took a sip of cold coffee. My mind began spinning through scenarios. Every sentence, every person, every footstep down hallways I knew so well. I could identify them by the creaks in the floor. He had played the wrong move from the very start. And he didn't even realize the game was never his to begin with. 8:02 the next morning. A message lit up my screen just as I set my coffee cup down. Oh, Sophia, it's chaos. Lydian refused the meeting. Noah's been in the legal office since 6:30. Cara Valdez, senior legal associate, once interned under me. Smart, observant, quiet. Her message was short, but I understood it clearly. The first domino had fallen. In less than 24 hours, everything Noah thought he had under control was dissolving before his eyes. And I didn't have to lift a finger. Everything was following the natural path of arrogance and ignorance, self-destructing. I stepped onto the balcony. The Texas wind was gentle, carrying the scent of damp soil and sagebrush after the night's rain. I grabbed my phone and opened the industry news app. Phoenix Biolabs was topping the investment risk alert list on two major analyst forums. No detailed reports, but just the phrase internal instability was enough to shake the stock. 917. Another message from Kara. You won't believe this. Jonathan Whitmore flew back to Houston this afternoon, arrived at HQ 30 minutes ago. No notice. And he's furious. Jonathan Whitmore, Noah's father, founder of Phoenix, former CEO of 26 years before he took a break to tour Europe with his new wife. A cold, calculating man who rarely appeared in public, but when he spoke, markets shifted. If he cut his trip short and returned without warning, there was only one explanation. His son had done something unforgivable. I didn't take my eyes off the screen when the next message came in. He just yelled at Noah in front of the entire board. You fired the only person who could hold Lydian. You're burning down your own company. Kara. I paused. In 12 years, I had never seen Jonathan Whitmore show emotion. Gone was the smooth talking voice from shareholder meetings, the calm presence behind a glass of aged whiskey. What stood in his place was a father and a businessman. Watching his son destroy what he had spent his whole life building, I sat in silence, then placed the phone on the table. A call came in. No caller ID. Hesitated a few seconds, then picked up. Sophia, it's me, Jonathan. His voice was rough, urgent, stripped of its usual composure. I need to speak with you. Stayed quiet. I know what happened yesterday was a mistake. I wasn't there, but I've heard everything, and now Lydian won't speak to anyone but you. I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the city through the window, rushing along as if nothing had happened. Okay, I'm no longer your employee, Jonathan. No, but you're the only one who can save this deal. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them and replied slowly. If I come back, I work directly with you, not through Noah, no intermediaries. I don't want to see him in any meeting that involves Lydian. On the other end, I heard a deep exhale. Agreed. 11:12 that morning, I walked into the main lobby of Phoenix, wearing a simple navy suit, hair tied neatly, not a single extra accessory. My old employee badge had been deactivated, but the receptionist recognized me instantly. Her face flushed with confusion, then she quickly stood. Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Whitmore is expecting you on the 11th floor, executive office. I nodded. The elevator gave a soft ding. The doors opened. I stood there, catching my reflection in the polished steel panel, composed, sharp, no longer the woman who had been fired just the day before. I wasn't coming back to beg. I was coming back to prove that some people, once gone, make a company finally realize how much they mattered. The doors opened to the 11th floor. The atmosphere was different, heavy, tense, filled with sideways glances. People who used to pass me without a nod now looked at me like I was the last life raft in the storm. I walked to the boardroom. The door was already open. Jonathan was waiting. He looked tired, more gray in his hair than the last time I saw him, but there was still fire in his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said. I nodded. No handshake, no small talk. Inside the room, everything had been prepared. I skimmed through the documents, a re-engagement letter, temporary control rights over the Lydian deal, and most importantly, a clause preventing any interference from Noah. I sat down and turned to the first page. We don't have much time, I said. Jonathan nodded. Lydian wants a video call at 3 o'clock. They'll only talk if you're leading. I gave a slight smirk. Not a smile, just confirmation. Then let's begin. Jonathan closed the boardroom door behind us. The room sank into thick silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected a gray Austin sky bracing for a storm, very fitting for the mood inside. On the table were 3 sets of documents, a copy of the contract with Lydian Group, an emergency authorization letter from the board, and a clearly marked internal agreement. Strategic authority granted solely to Sophia Ellis, no reporting through deputies, no oversight by acting CEO. I picked up the file, flipped through each page, each line, slowly, as if examining a verdict. Jonathan sat across, fingers interlocked, resting lightly on the table, eyes fixed on me. "I know it's late," he said, voice low and raspy. "I know I deserve the blame, but if I have one chance to make this right, it's sitting right in front of me." I closed the file and placed it firmly back on the table. "You don't need to convince me with words, Jonathan. Everything should be proven through action, and the first action is this." I pointed to the bolded line that read, "No involvement from Noah Whitmore in any part of the process related to Lydian Group." He nodded, without hesitation. "He's already been temporarily stripped of decision-making authority. I'll handle it with the board." "Oh," I interrupted. "You won't just handle it. You will completely remove him from any meeting, email, or internal channel related to this deal. I will not respond to any communication where Noah's name appears in the CC line." Mr. Whitmore froze for half a second, then nodded again, more slowly. "Understood, I promise." I leaned back in the chair, arms folded. "One more thing. Once the Lydian deal is secured, I want a permanent contract, not a department-level role, a position in the executive board with decision-making power. I'm done standing in the shadows like I have for the past 12 years. Jonathan looked at me, his expression shifting between regret and surprise. "Sophia, you know I've always respected your abilities, but you still let your son erase me from this company in 5 minutes. I'm not coming back to fix that mistake for you. I'm doing it for myself." He lowered his head, silent. I pulled a pen from my blazer, flipped to the last page of the authorization file, and signed it with a firm stroke. "We have less than 4 hours before Lydian calls back. I want the latest financials, the next quarter growth projections, and the board's member file. I'll be leading the call, and if anyone speaks before I do, I walk." Jonathan stood, his eyes a mix of gratitude and unease. "I'll personally prepare everything, and I'll make sure no one crosses you." I didn't say anything else. I just looked at him, then pulled out my phone and typed 3 simple words to Kara. "Start it now." About 2:13 made that in an afternoon. I walked into the auxiliary executive room where I had requested a separate setup for the video call. No company logos, no slogans on the walls. I wanted everything neutral, focused. Laptop connected, microphone tested, slides ready. 3 minutes later, Kara entered, face tight with tension. "We've got a problem. Rumors are spreading internally that you're just back temporarily. Some of Noah's supporters are claiming you lack innovative vision." I gave a faint smile, not from amusement, but because I had been waiting for exactly this. "Good. Let them doubt. Let them think I'm just here to patch holes. They won't understand why the entire office changes course tomorrow until it's too late." Kara nodded and exited quickly. 2:59. I opened a screen. Lydian Group was in the virtual waiting room. 3 o'clock, I hit accept. The screen displayed 3 faces: Marcus Linwood, Alyssa Brown, and Rebecca Sue, head of legal. No greetings, no smiles. Marcus spoke first, voice calm but unmistakably cold. "We don't want to waste time. What assurance do we have that Sophia Ellis is still leading this deal without interference?" I turned on the camera, stared directly into the lens, my tone firm and even. "I've signed a formal agreement with Phoenix. I have full authority to lead this deal with no oversight from any management tier, including the current acting CEO." Rebecca raised an eyebrow, her tone sharp. "You'll need a copy of that document." I immediately sent the PDF file through a secure link and clarified. "Any structural changes will be communicated directly from me. There will be no middlemen." Marcus studied me for a few seconds, then nodded. "All right, let's begin renegotiation." I gave a slight smile, not out of triumph, but because this was just the beginning. The screen was split in 4, each face clear: Marcus Linwood with his signature rimless glasses, Alyssa Brown jotting notes, and Rebecca Sue, sharpest of the 3, arms crossed, eyes dissecting every breath I took. I drew in a deep breath, letting the silence of the executive room settle over me. No table taps, no interruptions. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Thank you all for continuing this call, I began, voice calm but clear. I understand the sudden changes have led to doubt and loss of trust, but I'm not here to justify, I'm here to fix. A brief silence, then Rebecca spoke. First question remains, who is truly in charge of this deal? I didn't blink. I am. Directly. Full authority. No intermediaries. Not influenced by anyone, including the current acting CEO. Marcus nodded but didn't smile. He didn't need expressions. True authority comes from knowing when to stay silent. But we want written confirmation. A guarantee that if there are any personnel changes, especially leadership, of this deal, the contract may be terminated immediately. I've prepared that, I said, holding the file up to the camera. The draft has already been reviewed by Phoenix's legal team. The final copy will be signed today. Rebecca hadn't looked away from me once. And the public apology. I paused for half a second, then stared straight into the camera. The Phoenix Biolabs made a serious mistake. A rushed, uninformed decision with no proper review put our partnership in jeopardy. On behalf of the company, I accept responsibility for not stepping in sooner to prevent the fallout. Alyssa stopped writing. Marcus tilted his head. I continued. I propose that Phoenix Biolabs issue an internal statement clarifying that my dismissal does not reflect the company's policies or values and reaffirm its commitment to personnel stability throughout the duration of this partnership. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. You don't want a public statement in the press? I shook my head. No need. The market will know when Phoenix fulfills what it promised, not through press releases, but through results. All three people on the screen remained silent. I didn't add anything further. I had given them exactly what they needed, not polished words, but control, clarity, and accountability. Marcus finally spoke. If you follow through on everything you just presented, Lydian Group is willing to move forward with the deal. However, he paused. I leaned forward slightly, keeping eye contact. We will require that you personally handle all monthly reports, attend every joint strategic board meeting, and be present for each quarterly review throughout the duration of the partnership. I nodded without hesitation. I accept. Rebecca glanced at Marcus, then said, one final condition: if, in the future, anyone previously involved in your dismissal interferes in the deal, Lydian reserves the right to withdraw unilaterally. I knew exactly who that referred to. Noah Whitmore? I pressed my lips together, unfazed. Agreed, and I'll make sure that clause is included in today's contract amendment. At that moment, Marcus finally leaned back, removed his glasses, and placed them on the table. Then, we moved forward. I didn't exhale in relief. I didn't smile. I simply nodded, a small gesture, but within it was the weight of a crisis narrowly averted. The call ended at 3:42. I stood, stretched, and stepped out into the hallway. Kara was waiting at the door, eyes wide. You actually did it? Dean agreed to continue, but the terms are twice as strict. Did they say anything about Noah? I looked at her directly. If he shows up in this deal again, the contract gets terminated instantly. Kara swallowed hard. Mr. Jonathan will have to swallow bitter truths about his son. Not just bitter truths, he'll have to sign off on the very clause that sidelines Noah permanently. I returned to the main conference room. Jonathan was staring out the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly slumped like he was carrying the weight of a company about to crack. I didn't say a word. I simply handed him the papers, the internal memo, the revised contract, and the personnel stability commitment. He read every line, then slowly signed. Sophia? I raised my hand to stop him. I don't need an apology. I just need you to keep your word, because if Noah gets near this again, I'll be the first to walk, and no one will be coming back to save you. Jonathan nodded. The color had drained from his face. I walked out without looking back, because I knew from this moment on, every pair of eyes in the company would see me differently. As I walked out of the boardroom with the signed agreement in hand, the 11th floor hallway fell unnaturally silent. The eyes that usually darted around like radar now avoided me completely. No one dared meet my gaze. They knew what had just happened, and they didn't want to be involved. I stopped in front of the CEO's office, its heavy door shut tight, behind which was a closed meeting between Jonathan Whitmore and the board. 10 minutes later, Kara rushed out of the elevator, breathless. Sophia, Mr. Jonathan just made the announcement. Noah's been immediately suspended. The board is voting on whether to remove him entirely. I nodded, showing no surprise. It was only a matter of time. Kara stared at me, uncertain. You don't? I feel relieved. I looked down the hallway, where light spilled through the frosted glass. Not relieved. This should have happened a long time ago, and it's not over yet, Kara. The next day, an internal email was sent out at 6:45 in the morning. Due to serious procedural violations, Mr. Noah Whitmore will be suspended from all executive authority pending a special board hearing. No detailed explanation, no apology, but everyone knew. Noah's reign at Phoenix Biolabs was over. Still, I knew too well. People like Noah don't leave quietly. They don't accept failure. And especially, they don't forgive the ones who embarrassed them. Before noon, the first rumor spread. Sophia only got the deal back by playing dirty, not through skill. By that afternoon, she threatened Lydia to pull funding unless she was reinstated. I overheard it in the pantry, from 3 finance staff whispering over coffee. They didn't see me behind the door. It took me no more than 3 seconds to know the source of those toxic words. Noah. Being suspended didn't mean being silenced. He still had allies, those he promoted, lifted up, or promised power, snakes still slithering through a system I thought I had cleared. I didn't get angry. I didn't storm in to correct them. I did the one thing they feared most. I stayed silent, and I observed. 3 days later, a document was accidentally sent to my inbox. Subject line, urgent proposal to reevaluate leadership on the Lydian deal. It was an internal report, unsigned. It listed a series of concerns about my effectiveness. Unilateral decision-making, ignoring reporting protocols, causing interdepartmental tension. I read every word. Then I smirked coldly. Whoever sent it didn't dare leave a name, but it didn't matter anymore, because I had started collecting evidence from the very first day I returned. Since taking over the deal, I had requested the IT team to log all edit histories in the CRM system, especially documents related to Lydian. I knew exactly which emails had been tampered with, who accessed files at odd hours, who printed reports at night without authorization, and I kept every log file, every deleted chat message, every email that was conveniently forgotten. I did not just survive the internal politics. I learned how to turn it into an advantage. That afternoon, I called Kara into my office. I need a list of all personnel appointed by Noah within the last 6 months before his suspension, also their work assignment history on the Lydian project. Kara hesitated. Day. What are you planning to do? Cut the roots, I said, my voice low but cold. I cannot run a strategic operation with people digging holes under me every day. Kara nodded, understanding. 3 hours later, the list was on my desk. 3 familiar names stood out. People who had sat in report meetings with me, who had accidentally missed deadlines, who had mistakenly formatted documents wrong just to make me stumble in front of Lydian. They thought I did not notice. They were wrong. The next morning at 10 o'clock, I entered the strategic meeting room carrying 2 folders. Inside were everything: network monitoring reports, system access, behavior analyses, and internal communications filled with accidental irregularities. I placed both folders firmly on the table. This is everything I have gathered over the past 2 weeks. If anyone still doubts why the Lydian deal nearly collapsed, feel free to review. No one said a word. Jonathan Whitmore looked at me, then at the folder. He flipped open the first page, his eyes narrowing when he saw the name at the top. Daniel Rivers, he whispered. Was appointed by Noah to oversee weekly reporting, and the one who sent the falsified evaluation package to Lydian last week, I said without blinking. Jonathan closed the folder. I will present this to the board this afternoon, and I will request a full internal investigation. I nodded. Also, from now on, I want all internal communication regarding Lydian encrypted separately. No one accesses anything without my approval. Jonathan did not argue. He only said one thing. Sophia, I'm beginning to understand why they fear you. I did not answer, because their fear was not from what I had done. It was from what I had not yet done. Monday morning, I received an email from Human Resources titled, Urgent Meeting Request for Leadership Performance Review 9, o'clock IEME tomorrow. No further details, but I knew exactly what awaited me behind that door. It would not be a normal meeting. I had seen this tactic before. Those pushed into a corner rarely fight head-on. They disguise their attacks with process. A performance review was just a trap, meant to throw vague accusations, seed doubt, and push the target into a defensive position, turning them into a suspect. I was ready. Since returning to Phoenix Biolabs, I had carefully built a parallel archive, work logs, confirmation emails, IT reports of unauthorized access. I collected every shred left behind by Noah's chaos, every act of sabotage disguised as mistakes. I had also quietly worked with the tech department to trace system anomalies, emails edited after sending, reports printed illegally at midnight from unregistered devices, all documented, time-stamped, IP addressed, and user-authenticated. Noah Whitmore. At 8:47 next morning, I stepped into meeting room 6, where HR had scheduled the review. Inside sat Mara Wilson, head of HR, a third-party legal representative, and, unsurprisingly, Noah Whitmore. Suspended but still brazenly seated at the head of the table with a feigned calmness. I sat down, placed my black notebook on the table, the same one I had carried since my first day back. Mara spoke first, her voice gentle, almost apologetic, like rain falling at the wrong time. Sophia, there have been some concerns raised internally about your management style. Some feel you are creating a tense, non-collaborative environment. Noah cut in, smirking. We simply want to ensure stability. Big deals need leadership that fosters unity, not division. I did not react. I did not blink. I simply opened my notebook, flipped to the marked page, and said crisply, Before we go any further, I have documentation to submit for the record. I pushed the folder toward Mara. She opened the first page. Her eyes immediately changed. What is this? She asked. A consolidated report of professional misconduct, system tampering, and internal sabotage, verified by the IT department and cross-referenced against system logs over the past 3 weeks. I glanced at Noah. Included is the record of confidential material being printed at 2:17 a.m. on the 6th of this month, from a printer on the 9th floor. At that time, only one employee badge was active in that area. The badge registered to Noah Whitmore. Noah flushed from pale to crimson, stammering, I had a reason. I was just double-checking some documents. I cut him off. And here is the audio recording from an internal finance meeting where Noah encouraged staff to spread false claims that I threatened Lydian to demand power. Recording provided by an anonymous witness, now filed with the legal department. The room thickened with silence. Mara stayed quiet. The legal rep placed his pen down. I opened my final email on the laptop and projected it onto the screen. This is the confirmation from Lydian Group. It states clearly that all collaboration requests came from their side without any coercion or influence from me. Noah shot up, face twisted. This is fabricated. You faked all of it. This is just revenge. Mara stood up immediately, turning to the attorney. I recommend full suspension of Mr. Noah Whitmore from all company activities. The file will be submitted to the board within 24 hours. The attorney nodded. Noah cursed, shoved his chair over, and stormed out of the room. I gathered my documents and stood up slowly. As I walked toward the door, I turned back to Mara. I'm not fighting for a seat, I'm fighting to clear the trash from the foundation. And she did not argue. Friday morning, I walked into the board of directors meeting room at 8 o'clock sharp as instructed. Everything was already set up. No flowers, no banners. Only Jonathan Whitmore sitting at the head of the table, dressed in a dark gray suit, wearing an expression as serious as if he were about to sign a death warrant for a campaign. On the table was a white envelope sealed with red wax, no logo, only 3 words, executive appointment. Jonathan said nothing at first. He simply pushed the envelope toward me with 2 fingers, no emotion, no urgency. I opened it, a bold title across the top. Appointment of Sophia Ellis as Chief Operating Officer, Phoenix Biolabs. I froze for a brief second, not because I was surprised, but because deep down I knew this moment wasn't born from favor, but from the inevitable consequence of truth. You're the only candidate the board voted for unanimously, Jonathan said, his voice rough but clear, not because you saved the company, but because you showed us who is rotting it from within. I folded the appointment letter carefully, as if placing a weapon I had spent a lifetime preparing back into its case. I'm not taking this title to become the face of change, I said. I'm taking it to execute it. Jonathan nodded, his eyes, for the first time, truly seeing me as an equal. The following week was chaos. I did not hold a press conference. I did not issue a public statement. I began cleaning house, literally. I froze all former executive access. I reviewed every delayed contract blamed on technical errors. I demanded every department head report directly to me within the first 48 hours. No secretaries, no excuses. And then, something I never expected happened. People started lifting their heads when I walked by. No more wary glances, no more robotic nods. Instead, there was a respect that needed no words. Because they saw that after years, the company was no longer being steered by inherited names, but by someone who had climbed every rung with her own hands. The first all-staff meeting I chaired took place Monday morning. I walked to the podium with nothing but a pen and a blank sheet of paper. I looked out at hundreds of employees, from department heads to technicians, from HR to logistics, and spoke. I'm not standing here to be someone great. I'm standing here to remind you that you are the reason this company exists. The room was so silent I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner. I know you've been tired of pretending not to see wrongdoing, tired of staying silent just to survive, but starting today, you no longer have to survive. We will rebuild. Every process, every relationship, every shred of trust. I paused, then lowered my voice. And I swear to you this, no one will be shut out of a room again just because they do not carry the name Whitmore. The room erupted in applause. Not the kind given out of fear, not the kind given for show, but the kind that comes when people finally see a light at the end of a long tunnel. That evening, I sat alone in my new office. Light from the skyscrapers across the street cast crisscross patterns onto the glass like memories of a battle just ended. On the desk was the first report I had signed as COO. No one interrupted. No one screened it. I was the one making the decisions. And for the first time in my career, I no longer needed to fight for belief. I only needed to keep doing what I had always done. Lead with truth, act with values. I lifted my head, gazing toward the streets lit up in red and gold, threading like veins through the city. And I knew Phoenix Biolabs had entered a new era. And this time, I would not let anyone destroy it. The Fia story is clear proof that true value does not come from titles or inheritance, but from resilience, integrity, and the ability to act decisively in times of crisis. In real life, we may sometimes be misjudged or cast aside for irrational reasons, but if we stand firm on our principles and continually build our strength, recognition will come. not through praise, but through the power to decide and make change. True success is when you no longer need to fight for a seat at the table, because you are the table. What do you think about Sophia's journey? Have you ever experienced being underestimated and then turning the situation around like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel to catch more emotional real-life family stories coming soon.